Well, by this point, you've likely already read the title of this video, and that is likely the reason why you have clicked on this video. And I can't believe that I'm about to record this video. Just to give a brief overview of the last roughly year and a half or so in the life of the Gibson Guitar Company. Gibson, of course, went through a very tumultuous summer back in 2018 and ended up going through bankruptcy. Their longtime CEO, Henry Juskowitz, was essentially forced out of the company and was eventually replaced by a new CEO by the name of James J.C. Curley. Everything seemed to be all fine and well. He was making rounds and shaking hands and kissing babies and all kinds of stuff the following year at Winter NAMM. It wasn't too long after that they released the now infamous Play Authentic video, and then just days later announced that they are filing a lawsuit against Dean Guitars. And then, oh yeah, let's not forget the whole excavator thing, which, you know, in that instance, I actually defend Gibson on that particular instance. You know, so they've actually been quiet for the last 6 or 8 months or so. Today, I actually saw a video, a couple of things that made me want to say something about this. I saw a video on the Guitarologist channel, and also listened to my friends David and Jim at the Practical Guitarist podcast, because they were talking about this on their show last week. And it seems that the Gibson Guitar Company have now decided to sue Kiesel guitars over 2 different guitar models. One of them being the Kiesel Ultra V, which, you know, here's a picture of it, but, you know, a rough description would be, the body shape anyway, would be kind of like a Rhodes V, but flipped over, you know, the longer horn being on the bottom instead of the top. The other one being for the CS6, the CS standing for California Single Cut, which is Kiesel's single cut model. Starting with the Ultra V, Gibson, of course, are suing based on trademark infringement of their famous Flying V, which has been out since 1958. More on that in a minute. And the CS6 single cut, of course, you know, as being a trademark infringement on the Les Paul. Now, according to Jeff Kiesel himself, Kiesel, then Carvin Guitars, came out with the Ultra V back in 1986 when Jeff Kiesel's father was still running the company, and Jeff actually named that guitar himself as a 7-year-old. Gibson did not actually get their trademark finalized on the Flying V until 1995, 9 years later. Regarding the other portion on the CS6 model, another brief piece of Gibson history. Of course, Gibson sued Paul Reed Smith for their design of the Paul Reed Smith single cut guitar in 2006. PRS initially lost that lawsuit, and then a few other details came out after that. Long story short, PRS ended up after that lawsuit almost bankrupted him and put him out of business. They actually ended up going back to court, and the decision was reversed, and PRS Guitars won that decision after all, and of course the single cut is still in production today. After that whole lawsuit was done and over with, the precedent was set that single cut design guitars could in fact be made and produced, and it was after that lawsuit was finalized that then Carvin Guitars came out with the CS6. So there is your basic synopsis of this whole Gibson versus Kiesel Guitars lawsuit, cease and desist letter thing, period. I guess to be fair, this has not technically been a lawsuit filed yet. Gibson have merely sent Kiesel a cease and desist letter, I assume in the hopes of spooking them into halting production on these models so that there isn't a lawsuit down the road. So I am going to preface everything else I'm going to say in this video with this thought. This is not meant to be a Gibson bashing video. I still love Gibson as much as I always do, or as much as I always did. I still own Gibson guitars. I'm not taping over any logos or anything like that. You know, I am a fan of Gibson guitars. So, with that in mind, I have one question for the Gibson Guitar Company. What are you doing? This is ridiculous. I defended you guys on the Dean thing, and you know, and I tried to be as open-minded about it as I could. But you know, the more you guys keep going to the well, it's getting harder and harder to do. You know, when you look at the guitars that you're going after, the Ultra V, it's not even remotely close. Anybody can eyeball it and see that it is a completely different design, you know, and not the same thing as a Flying V. Anybody can see that. Anybody can look at the Kiesel single cut model and see that it is a completely different design by a completely different company and is not the same guitar as a Les Paul. Anybody can see that. So what is Gibson thinking? It's very clear that whoever it was that, you know, before the letter was written, certainly before it was sent out, you know, you guys didn't do your homework very well on this at all. As I mentioned, just anybody can eyeball the guitars that are in question and see that they are not even remotely the same. And furthermore, you guys might want to, it probably would have been a good idea to see what kind of guy Jeff Kiesel is. I don't know Jeff Kiesel. I've never met Jeff Kiesel. I've never communicated with him directly or indirectly. You know, he and I are not acquainted at all. But from what I understand, he has a reputation for being quite the asshole when he needs to be. And also seems to be rather scrappy and not very likely to be spooked and just walk away from this and quit being a thorn in your side. He is probably going to become more of a thorn in Gibson's side if I had to guess. Because with the recent popularity and boom of Kiesel guitars in the last few years, they've sold a lot of guitars. And I'm willing to bet they have enough dollar bills stuffed in the mattress that financially they can take this on and fight it. And from what I understand about Jeff Kiesel, he is absolutely planning on doing so, and quite honestly is probably going to win. I'm not a legal expert, but from everything that I can see, I don't see how Gibson could possibly walk away from this on top. I think this is going to turn out to be a very bad decision for Gibson. The flip side to this is there's another guitar company out there in the world today that is also gaining in a lot of popularity called Harley Benton. And Harley Benton recently announced that they were coming out with this guitar. And if it looks familiar, it probably should, because it is essentially a copy, or a clone, if you will, of a Kiesel headless model. And my understanding is that Kiesel are now suing Harley Benton over their copyright infringement of the of this headless guitar model. The actual model name of the model escapes me, but why can't we all just get along? You know, if you look at the pedal builders, you know, which are essentially just another leg of the exact same industry that we're in. You know, all of those guys are good friends. They all get along. They communicate regularly with each other. And bounce ideas off of each other. You know, and I'm talking about guys like Brian Wampler and Robert Keeley and Tom Cram and John Cusack and Mike Matthews and Josh Scott, and the list goes on and on and on. You know, Zachary Vex. We all know Zachary Vex isn't my biggest fan, but he is definitely part of that community. Those guys all have a mutual respect for each other and work together. And the last thing anybody's thinking about doing is suing each other, and filing lawsuits over, who's, over somebody's latest tube screamer circuit. Brian Wampler, great guy. I like, I don't know him very well. I have met him a couple times, but I don't know him very well. But I like Brian a lot, and I really like his pedals. As a side note, I actually did a demo on the Pinnacle V2 a while back, and it was not sponsored by Wampler. I just happened to get a hold of one through a friend, and that demo was one of the worst demos that I've done in a while. It did not sound very good. So, Brian, if you see this, I apologize. Next time, I promise you, I will do better. Anyway, but Brian also has a YouTube channel, well over 100,000 subscribers. And he also hosts a podcast called the Chasing Tone Podcast along with Blake Weiland. And I listen to that podcast pretty regularly when I'm driving home. And one thing that they were talking about this specifically, Brian even said, everything I'm telling you here is direct, is basically me just repeating what Brian Wampler said on their podcast. He mentioned again, they're all friends. They all get along and communicate and all that kind of stuff like I just talked about. Once upon a time, not that long ago, Josh Scott, JHS Pedals, came out with an overdrive called the Crayon. Everybody else in that community all went to Josh and said, hey, dude, EHX has an overdrive pedal already called the Crayon. Matter of fact, they got 2 of them. You sure this is a good idea? You know what Josh Scott said? He said, yeah, I talked to Mike about it. It's fine. And it was. Both companies have an overdrive pedal out called the Crayon. Both companies have sold lots and lots of units. Both companies have lots and lots of happy customers and have made plenty of money from each of those, and everybody's happy. There is not this circle jerk going on, lawsuit circle jerk going on with the pedal builders like there is the guitar builders, and every time you turn around, somebody's suing each other. What is it with you guys all? What are you guys doing? Playing swords? Seriously. Somebody help me understand what the logic is in this and why guitar builders, just cannot get along and work together. You're not doing anything except hurting the entire guitar community by filing lawsuits against each other every other week. So thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video, as ridiculous as it might be. I can't believe I'm actually sitting here doing another video on another guitar lawsuit thing. Oh boy, the world, the times we're living in. Please consider hitting the subscribe button down below, as well as the bell right next to it. I'll post any pertinent links pertinent links to anything that I discussed in this video down in the description for you to check out as well, including a link to the video of the Guitarologist's video where he actually interviewed Jeff Kiesel. It's actually pretty enlightening about at least Kiesel's side of it. Don't forget to leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on this whole situation. I know I'm a little late to the party on this, but truth is I actually just heard about this today. So I guess the guitar companies just want to make sure that guys like me got something to talk about next time they're sitting down in front of a camera.